I hesitated outside the door, not wanting to interrupt. Then I heard something that made my stomach tighten. The student said, "You said not to tell anyone. Nightmare 1. Trust is something we give away every day without thinking about it. We trust the people who teach us. We trust the people closest to us. We trust the people we work with. Most of the time, nothing happens. But sometimes, that trust turns into the biggest mistake you'll ever make. These are 3 true nightmares about trust, and the moment it shattered. Nightmare 1. In high school, everyone trusted Mr. Caldwell. He had been teaching history at the school for over 20 years, the kind of teacher who remembered students long after they graduated. He coached debate club, helped kids apply for scholarships, and stayed late after school for anyone who needed extra help. Parents loved him. Students trusted him. That's why no one questioned it when he started offering tutoring sessions after school. The sessions were held in an empty classroom down the hall from the library. At first, there were several students attending, but over time the group got smaller. Eventually, it was usually just 2 or 3 students at a time. I went a few times myself. Nothing seemed strange at first. He would go over assignments, explain historical events, and sometimes tell stories about his years teaching. But one evening, something happened that stuck with me. I had forgotten a notebook in the classroom after tutoring ended, so I went back to grab it. The hallway was mostly empty by then, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. When I reached the door, it was slightly closed. Inside, I could hear Mr. Caldwell talking, but the conversation sounded different. His voice was quieter, almost urgent, and there was only one other voice answering him, one of the younger students. I hesitated outside the door, not wanting to interrupt. Then I heard something that made my stomach tighten. The student said, "You said not to tell anyone." The room went silent. I stepped back before anyone could see me, suddenly feeling like I had overheard something I wasn't supposed to. I told myself it was nothing, probably just something about grades. But over the next few weeks, rumors started spreading quietly through the school. Students whispering, teachers having private meetings in the office. Then one morning, Mr. Caldwell simply wasn't there anymore. No announcement, no explanation, just a substitute teacher standing at the front of the classroom. It wasn't until months later that people started learning the truth. Several students had come forward. Stories about private tutoring sessions, conversations no one else heard, promises made behind closed doors. The investigation was handled quietly, but eventually Mr. Caldwell was arrested. What scared me most wasn't just what he did. It was how easily it happened, because for years, no one questioned him. After all, everyone trusted the teacher. Trust has a way of lowering your guard. It makes people feel safe around someone they might otherwise question. If you're enjoying these stories, take a moment to like and subscribe to Nightmare Central for more true horror every week. Because the next nightmare didn't involve a teacher. It involved someone even closer, a best friend. Nightmare 2. Dylan and I had been best friends since middle school. We grew up in the same neighborhood, spent weekends playing video games, and even got our first jobs together at a local grocery store. He was the kind of friend who always seemed loyal. If someone messed with you, Dylan had your back. At least, that's what I thought. When we were in our early 20s, I started saving money to move into my own apartment. Dylan knew about it because I talked about it constantly. He knew where I kept the cash I'd been setting aside, inside a small lockbox in my bedroom closet. I didn't think much about telling him that. He was my best friend. One night, we had a few people over for a small get-together at my place. Nothing crazy, just a few drinks and music. Dylan stayed later than everyone else. Around midnight, he said he was heading home. The next morning, when I woke up, the house was quiet, but something felt off. My bedroom door was slightly open. I remembered closing it the night before. At first, I assumed someone had wandered in looking for a bathroom or something. Then I opened my closet. The lockbox was still there, but the lid was slightly ajar. Inside, the money I'd been saving for months was gone. Nearly $3,000. I called Dylan first. I wasn't accusing him. I just wanted to see if he remembered anything strange from the night before. But the moment I mentioned the missing money, his tone changed. He got quiet, then defensive. He insisted he hadn't touched it, said maybe someone else at the party took it. But there was one problem with that explanation. Dylan was the last person to leave, and he was the only one who knew exactly where the money was. A few days later, another friend told me something I hadn't known. Dylan had been in serious debt, owing money to people he probably shouldn't have been involved with. Not long after that, Dylan disappeared from town, moved away without telling anyone, changed his number. I never saw him again. The worst part wasn't losing the money. It was realizing something much harder to accept. Strangers might steal from you, but sometimes, so will your best friend. Betrayal from a friend is hard enough. But the final nightmare tonight didn't involve someone from school or someone from childhood. It involved someone most people trust every day without thinking. A coworker. Nightmare 3. At my office job, there was a guy named Kevin who everyone liked. He wasn't loud or particularly outgoing, but he had the kind of calm personality that made people feel comfortable around him. If someone had a technical issue or couldn't access a system, Kevin was the person they called. He worked in IT, which meant he had access to almost everything: employee logins, security permissions, internal systems. But no one really thought about that, because Kevin had been with the company for nearly 6 years. He trained new hires, helped reset passwords, and occasionally stayed late to fix server issues when things went down. He was the kind of coworker people trusted without thinking about it. Over time, people started relying on him for more than just technical help. If someone forgot their badge, Kevin could let them into restricted areas. If someone needed access to a file, Kevin could grant it. If someone was locked out of their account, Kevin could reset it in seconds. And because of that, Kevin slowly became the person who knew everything about everyone in the office: where people worked, what departments handled, who had access to which systems. At first, nothing about that seemed unusual. That was just his job. Then, one Thursday morning, everything changed. I arrived at work around 8:30 and immediately noticed something strange. 2 police cars were parked outside the building. Inside the lobby, several employees were standing around, whispering to each other, while our department manager spoke quietly with 2 officers. The office felt tense. Phones weren't ringing. People weren't talking much. Everyone seemed to be waiting for someone to explain what was happening. Then someone pointed toward Kevin's desk. His chair was pushed back. His monitors were gone. Even the small framed photo he kept beside his keyboard had disappeared. At first, we assumed he had taken the day off. But then the IT director walked into the room with a serious look on his face. That's when we learned the truth. Kevin hadn't just left early the night before. He had cleared out his entire workstation. And sometime after midnight, he remotely accessed several internal systems using administrative privileges. He downloaded massive amounts of data, employee records, payroll information, private contact details, even copies of identification documents that were stored in HR files. No one noticed it happening at the time, because Kevin's login activity looked normal. After all, he was the one who managed those systems. By the time the company realized something was wrong, Kevin was already gone. His apartment had been emptied overnight. His phone was disconnected. His car was missing. It took investigators weeks to track him down. They eventually found him living in another state under a different name. But by then, the damage had already spread. Employees started receiving notifications from their banks. Credit cards opened in their names, loans taken out, accounts created using stolen identities, thousands of dollars disappearing from people who had never even met Kevin outside the office. What made it so disturbing was how simple it had been. There was no hacking, no forced entry, no complicated cyber attack. Kevin had simply used the access everyone gave him, the passwords people trusted him with, the security permissions no one questioned, because in an office full of strangers, he wasn't a stranger. He was the quiet coworker who fixed everyone's problems, the one people waved to in the hallway, the one who stayed late to help when systems crashed, the one everyone trusted. And that trust gave him everything he needed. Trust doesn't always break loudly. Sometimes it disappears quietly, along with the person you gave it to. This was nightmares of trust. Sleep carefully.